I get asked often, are all sins the same? Well, I want to know what you think. So I put together another poll. Go ahead and click on that and then answer. Yes, no, or depends. Welcome to Looking Intently. I put out short videos on the Bible each week. I'm going through the book of James right now, and to make sure that you're notified when a new video comes out, click the subscribe button in the lower right, and then be sure and click that bell icon when it appears as well. Okay, so we're asking this question, are all sins the same? Well, no. You can look at the Old Testament and see that, right? God, who gave the penalties for sins through Moses, the Mosaic Law, it includes penalties for things people did, things like stealing. And God says you steal, you replace it, plus some. He says you murder, then you're to be put to death for that. Different sins, different things they did, and different penalties given by God himself. So all sins aren't the same. But then you read here in James chapter 2, verses 9 through 11, but if you show partiality, you are committing sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. For whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has become guilty of all of it. For he who said, God said, do not commit adultery, also said, do not murder. If you do not commit adultery but do murder, you have become a transgressor of the law. Okay, are all sins the same? That seems to say yes. As I say, it doesn't matter what you do. You sin once, you're a transgressor. It's this all or nothing. It doesn't matter one sin, 1,000 sins, this sin, a small sin we might call it, or a big sin, they're all the same. So are all sins the same? Well, the right answer would be depends. And you know, the polls are anonymous, so if you click the wrong one, don't worry, no one knows what you put. Different sins have different earthly consequences because they do have different earthly severity. God shows us that in the Old Testament. Our law continues that, and I think we're glad it does, right? Would you want to go to jail for years if you get a speeding ticket? No, it'd be unreasonable, we'd say. But you need to look at this the other way as you're talking about whether your person is lost or saved, the basis of our relationship with God. Any sin separates us from God. If a person only sinned once their entire life, and it was we might call it a little white lie, that person is lost and in need of God's grace, in need of salvation, because God is absolutely holy. God is absolutely separate from sin. He can't commit it, but he also can't permit it to go unpunished, to just overlook and ignore. One sin deserves eternal separation from God. So think about the implications here. First of all, for trying to live a good enough life. First of all, for a person who's not a Christian, if they say, I don't need to become a Christian, I'm a good person. Okay, relatively, compared to others, they might be. But you apply James 2:10, no way. I'm sure they'd probably admit they've sinned at least once. That verse makes it clear, you sin once, you're lost and in need of grace. Same thing for Christians. Sometimes we can think, all right, my sins have been forgiven, but now, I'm living a good, godly life. Well, God wants us to live a good, godly life and grow and mature, but we will never get to the point where we could base our relationship with God on our own level of goodness. Well, the other implication, you look at this, what about, downplaying some sin? I know God said not to do this, but it's not really that important. Well, that's saying something God said isn't important. Again, there might be different earthly levels, but God said it for a reason. And so there's that total lack of humility to say, God is God and I'm not, or God is God and I'm not too far behind, so I can make a pronouncement on this. I can change what he said. Things are different now. And then even, there you hear some of those 8 dogs right now. And then even the implication for our view of grace. That is so important. If we think I need less grace than someone else, I've sinned less, my sins are smaller, we're going to look down on them. Or if we think I need more grace, we're going to have shame. Pride or shame, it always leads to one of those. Well, how have any of those examples ever impacted you? Have you tried to witness to someone and they brought up, I'm not that bad? Apply James 2:10. Hopefully that will help. Have you ever caught yourself in that mindset of, my relationship with God's pretty good because I'm pretty good? Apply James 2:10 to that. Have you caught yourself maybe downplaying a sin or, it's not that big a deal, things are different now? Apply James 2:10 to that. And definitely this idea of grace. We all need it equally. We are either lost or saved. We need an equal amount of grace. That means we're on level footing like that spiritually, where it really counts. You know, when God looks at me, are you lost? Are you saved? And so that should lead to that unity. Certainly shouldn't do anything to prevent that unity and that community. All right, well, how will I do that? How will I make this habit of applying this James 2:10 verse so I see things the way God sees things here? Come up with a specific step, and one step that's always there. Be sure when you read the good book to read it like a good book.